everyone, and welcome to the Takarazuka Review fan podcast, where fans from around the world get together to talk about Takarazuka. Today we have sort of a sad topic to talk about, but before we get into that, let's introduce who's on the show. This is Jen in New York.
And this is Becca in California.
And Carly in New York.
Great. So we haven't done a show in forever, so I'm very excited to be doing this. But I'm sure we all have a lot of really happy things of Takarazuka to talk about before we get into the show itself. So, Becca, do you want to go first?
Sure. So mine is a silly thing, but Sakura Ichika liked one of my tweets. There was a picture that I think it was from her account that she posted of her and Hanano Julia, and they both just look very much like normal people in a very sweet way. So I retweeted it with a comment, "I love everything about this picture," kind of not really thinking at all about the audience, but it's a pretty easy sentence to understand, and so she liked my tweet, and maybe she likes any tweet, but I still felt special.
That was really cute.
That is nice.
Yeah, my Twitter account is locked, so even if I respond to tweets or retweet things, they can't see it, so oh well. How about you, Carly? What's been making you happy lately?
So last week, Yukigumi was on, or part of Yukigumi was on the FNS Summer Music Festival. And the whole performance was really fun, but the thing that was especially entertaining to me was, for some reason, Asami Jun went extremely viral, among non-Takarazuka fans. Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people were, retweeting this one particular photo set of her, Irimachi photos. And she had, over 20,000 mentions on Twitter, and she was trending. And then I saw this and I was like, good for her. And then I watched the performance and nothing happened. She was just being her normal usual self, and I think she had a cumulative 12 seconds of TV time. So everybody just really fell in love with her based on just how she is. Nothing special happened, and I thought that was really great.
That's so Takarazuka, though. It's all about, that thing, you know? Oh, that's so funny. What did she perform?
So the Yukigumi upperclassmen Otokuyaku, and yeah, I think it was just Otokuyaku in that number, were performing USA with Da Pump. Boy, saying that out loud, which I don't think I've ever done in my life, sounds stupid.
As many J-pop band names do.
Yeah. So they performed that together. And that was, I think, the moment that caused her to go viral.
I don't even know.
I want to go back and watch it to see what this could have possibly been.
I'm telling you, it was nothing. Everyone just thought she was cute.
Was there the gaze? Was it an otokoyaku moment, or was it just a actress moment?
I don't know. I wish I knew.
Please, Japanese fans, tell us why was Asami Jun so popular all of a sudden. That's funny. Oh man, I don't have anything particular on my end to talk about because I have not been a very good Takarazuka fan lately. I've been sucked into the world of really bad Chinese TV dramas lately. So I know, but I just remembered it made me really happy because a friend texted me a bunch of pictures of Hozuki An from, it must have been a photo book or something, and I just remembered that Hozuki An came back to Tsukigumi, and that made me really happy. So I guess that's going to be my happy thing, remembering that we got Chinatsu back.
Yeah, and the On the Town just opened, and the pictures came out, and she looks amazing. I'm really sad I'm not going to be able to see that.
Aww. I wonder if they probably won't put this one out on video since they did the other one. They usually don't.
Oh, I don't think either of them are getting a release for copyright reasons.
That's right. We did talk about that.
Unfortunately.
But programs, photo books, there's stuff.
Yeah, and this one got a CD for some reason.
That's pretty good.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's cool. Yeah. They must have had enough time to, like, figure out some of the copyrights for it.
Yeah.
They must figure out the copyrights, like, when they're even deciding whether to put on the show or negotiating the rights. Like, that must all be done, before it's ever announced.
Oh, yeah.
You'd like to think so, but some stuff seems so on the fly. Like,
I know sometimes
scripts.
It's ongoing, I think.
Yeah.
Like, I'm pretty sure, I don't know for sure, but, like, based on the timing of when it was released and stuff, I think they, like, got the rights to do Grand Hotel, but initially didn't have the rights to release it on DVD, and then ended up negotiating the rights after the show was already in production, and then they did release a DVD, but not on the normal schedule. So I think they keep trying sometimes, but
right. And I feel like they
successful.
must make recordings, even if it's just for themselves.
Oh, absolutely.
But they probably don't put as much effort into making a really nice, like, 8-camera recording to edit together later.
Yeah, definitely. But I have a friend who works for one of the camera companies that Takarazuka contracts out to. And we were talking about this exact thing, and she said they do record everything for the news at the very least.
Right.
And they record the whole show to edit out, the parts that they decide they want to put on the news. But yeah, it's not necessarily the quality that a DVD release would get.
Yeah, especially nowadays with the HD. And who even knows what the next level up is going to be after Blu-ray becomes...
I think NHK is starting to broadcast in 8K soon.
Oh my god, I'm not surprised. Japan's always ahead of us.
Yeah.
Well, you know that something is really off limits when sometimes even the news won't have a digest, or it's just pictures when they're read in some retrospective.
Yeah, I still remember, like, West Side Story, where there's, like, nothing. Like, from the original, not the original, the one that they did in the 90s, there's, like, nothing. I don't even know if there's audio recordings from the 90s performances.
So,
at least that went around.
I would have jumped on that.
Yeah. Sad. Anyway, so today's episode, the reason we actually finally got off our butts and decided to get together and do an episode is the really sad news that director and scriptwriter Shibata Yukihiro passed away on July 19th, I believe. So we wanted to do a little episode to sort of talk about him and some of his works, because he really was a major influence in the review. So I guess just a little bit of background. He was born in the 30s, and he joined the review in the late 50s. So he was actually in his late 20s when he started. And his first show wasn't until 1961 that he did for the review. But after that, he was very prolific. All kinds of Japanese style, Western style shows. I don't think, did he do any review shows, or were they mostly musicals?
I have the page open.
I can't think of any review shows that he did.
I think he stuck mostly to plays.
Yeah. Usually they specialize pretty quickly, but you know what I found out? He was actually just a year behind Ueda-sensei. Like, he was older than Ueda Shinji, but he started, like, the year after, so he was the, not the senpai, but he was older. But yeah, he was very prolific, won all kinds of awards, stage awards, theater awards for his performances, and he was influential in the music school curriculum in the 2000s, and towards the end of his career, he, probably for health reasons, he was getting older, he stopped directing, but he was still script writing up until, I want to say, what was the last show that he did? Yuzuki Reian's Taidan, right?
Yes. And there have been several restages of his previously written plays after that, but I believe that was the last original one that he wrote, and that was 2015.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah, great, Carly. Thank you for bringing that up. And one of the things we were talking earlier, I said, when I hear Shibata-sensei's name, the first thing I think of is all the restaging they've done of his shows, because other shows have been restaged a couple times, but so many of his shows have been restaged, and they've been restaged like 8 times, and it's just, yeah, he's very popular.
Right. Like, I often have not seen the original, but but the restagings just happen so much. And I'm looking through this list of shows, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any of these shows have a happy ending.
You know what? He's done some shows that weren't like tragedies, but even I think you're right. Like sometimes they don't end. Like the love interest might not end up together, or I'm sure one of them must have a happy ending.
Oh wait, hold on. He did Kuro Hitomi, and I remember. I don't know why I remember this, Jen, but you wrote in your review. This must have been 10 years ago, and it's
probably 20,
everyone, except for what's his name.
Yeah. Yeah, and we were talking too, like, I was going through the list of all his shows, and I was like, oh, I remember that show! I didn't realize that was Shibata-sensei's show. Like, so many shows that he's done. And we were like, we can't talk about all of them, so we're just gonna try and pick a couple. But before we do, like, in general, well, first of all, Carly, and maybe Becca too, I wanted to pick your brains because he was so, prolific, and he was a member of the review for 60 plus years. Wow. What, did you see anything on social media, like OGs posting about him, or anything that's been coming up in fandom? Did you see anything?
I think that was your comment that he died. I'm sorry, doesn't matter.
I saw a lot of OGs blogging about him or mentioning him on Instagram and Twitter. I don't remember off the top of my head specifically what any of them said, but yeah, almost all of the ones that I follow mentioned him in some way.
Yeah, I saw a lot of Japanese newspapers at least had a little blurb, and like a lot of fans were talking about it. And I thought it was interesting because I was reading some fans kind of like summarizing his shows, and tell me if you agree or not, because I thought some of it I agreed with and some I was like, but I noticed some of them said most of his shows were more of like for grown-ups, like romances for grown-ups. They weren't like the sugary sweet kind of romances. And they also said a lot of his shows had really not juicy, but like good parts for the musumeyaku, not just the lead role musumeyaku, but actually like multiple 3 or 4 like good roles for musumeyaku in a lot of the shows. I thought, oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I thought I was actually going to bring that up, so I'm glad that was a general consensus.
Yeah, I mean, what were you thinking, Carly?
Oh, I was just going to say that I think everything that I've seen of his has a really good musumeyaku role.
Yeah. Yeah, because I remember, like, Algiers, that I saw a restaging of, and I've seen a couple versions of, had, like, 4, like, big musumeyaku roles in it.
I just saw the tour, the Hoshigumi tour from this year, and I thought the same thing, and they all... It's great because, you know, especially nowadays, his shows are restaged for national tour so frequently. So you've already got half the troupe that you're working with, and there's just so many talented musumeyaku who, as we know, don't necessarily get to do very much all the time, and it's so nice to see that many of them featured in such strong roles.
Agreed.
Yeah, I remember when the Moon Troupe did, I think it was a tour version as well. God, what it must have been like 8 years ago now, and it was interesting to me because they were big roles, and it wasn't necessarily like the underclassmen musumeyaku who were getting promoted, and it wasn't necessarily the upperclassmen musumeyaku who usually get all like the big roles. It was kind of like in the middle kinds of musumeyaku who are getting these roles, and I like some that people who weren't like big fans of the troupe might have never heard of before, and I was like, oh, that's actually really cool. So I was impressed. But
yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Anything else you guys are thinking of that you want to mention before we jump into talking about specific shows?
I think it's amazing how well his restagings hold up even now, because some of them were written like in the 60s and 70s. Yes. And I mean, for sure they're dated, but not in like a bothersome way. It's like it feels like going back and watching, an old classic Hollywood movie. They just feel
Yes.
classic and they're still just as enjoyable to watch today for me personally, even if they're not the most modern stories.
Yeah, as I'm looking at this, I mean, I wonder how much of this really defined classic Takarazuka. And I don't mean things like Rosa Versailles, but there's something very classic about his works and that I think are very iconic shows.
Yes. I think it's interesting, like, because I remember going into Taka-an and buying up script books and things, because they used to print script books, and they did some in the 2000s, but they also have, like, a whole series of his works in, like, really nice bindings of script books of just, like, Shibata-sensei's works that I haven't really seen done for any of the other, like, script writers, and I'm like, I think that is part of it. It's, like, very classic, like, very well-written kind of compositions that people would buy and read, So, very cool. All right. Who would like to jump in and talk about one of theirs first? I guess I've been picking on Becca. Should I pick on Carly? You want to talk about one of yours first?
Sure. The first show that I wanted to mention is Gaisenmon, which is one of my favorite shows of all time. And it has been for quite a while. I've always really liked the original Yukigumi version, and then they put it on again last year, and I think I liked it even more. It's just, it's a beautiful show. It's really sad, and I also want to mention that very frequently now, when his shows are restaged, they seem to pair him up with Sha-sensei.
Yes.
And that is a dream pairing if there ever was one. So yeah, I mean his scripts are fantastic, and then she is one of my favorite directors. I never really noticed watching, my old fuzzy Sky Stage recording from the year 2000 or whatever it was of the original Gaisenmon, but I had the opportunity to see the restage live last year, and it's just, it was so beautifully staged. The sets, the choreography, the mood, and everything was just perfect. And I think Shibata-sensei's shows really, even if you're just reading the script, set a very definite mood. And then Sha-sensei does a great job of bringing them to life.
She's a director, but she's also a choreographer, and so
yes.
Her shows tend to be very lyrical, like movement-wise. Like,
yes,
so,
definitely.
I can see that. Yeah. That's cool. Actually, I'm going to steal the next one because you've talked about that combination, and that leads right into one of the shows I was going to talk about, which is Glassy Landscape, which was a show that they did in the early 2000s with Hoshigumi, with Star Troop. And it was Shibata-sensei's work, and Sha-sensei actually directed it. And it had a lot of her choreography in it. And it's interesting because I don't know any of his. He didn't do a lot of like suit shows that I can think of. But now that I'm saying that, I can think of a couple. But I guess those aren't the ones that like jump into your mind. Like the ones that are really restaged tend to be the period pieces. But but this was one of his suit shows, and it was kind of set semi-modern, but it was like the 1940s, 1950s Italy, and it was a murder mystery, which was just really cool and not anything that I'd seen him do before. And I really fell in love with that show, and it just had like pearls of just like really great comedy, and not so much the slapstick comedy that you think of with Takarazuka comedy, but it was just really funny, and it was an interesting show, and it kind of left you hanging until the end, figuring out who done it. So.
Wait, when you say there wasn't slapstick comedy, I distinctly remember, I think it was Misa Noeru and some other Senka member playing female roles and singing some number about who done it.
Yes, but, and that's what I'm kind of thinking of too, but it wasn't like a lot of the times when they have otokoyaku playing the female roles, they do it to make it, I don't know, sometimes it leaves me with kind of an icky feeling of them trying to, and this wasn't that. It was Senka members. I'm pretty sure they were still Senka at the time, doing more like an aunt kind of a role, and so I don't know. I just felt like it was funny. I can be corrected if anybody didn't like it.
I've had that
understand.
show on my shelf for years, and I still haven't watched it. And
Oh, really?
I always mean to, and it never happens. But someday I'm going to.
This is like going off onto a tangent, and we can cut it later if it gets crazy. But Aran Kei was in that show too. She was like the Nibante, and she played the inspector.
I remember that.
And her role in that show really reminded me of a character in a comic book series. And I was like, oh my gosh, she looks just like this detective, like, character in this series, blah, 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 blah. I got really excited about it. I was like, I really want them to put on this series now, this comic book series, and her to be in that role. And like later when she actually became a top star, they didn't put on that particular series, but they did another one by the same comic artist, and she had the lead role in it. And it was a very similar character, like design wise, they were drawn very similar. So I just thought it was really, really funny. I was like, oh,
what show was that?
Fun.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Yeah. And Eroica was her other series.
Yeah. Everybody wanted her to do that. I remember that.
Yeah. But anyway. All right. Becca, how about you? Tell us about a show that you really liked.
Sure. Kind of a love-hate relationship with this show because I saw it many times. But I'm going to bring up Valentia no Atsui Hana, or how's it usually translated? Hot Flower Valencia, Valencian Passion.
Valencian Passion.
Yeah.
And I think it was a show I ended up seeing a whole bunch of times, I think due to circumstance more than anything else. And so I went through different phases of enjoying it and not enjoying it. But I think, and the version I saw was back in 2007. It was Yamato Yuga's Top Star debut. And I think it's known for a few things. One is the use of flamenco dance. And then the other is there's a lot of really cool sword fighting sequences. But there's a lot of very classic tropes in there. People getting murdered, and revenge, and tragic love. And so, as I said, I sometimes have a love-hate relationship with this show because I saw it so many times and it got a little old after a while, but I do consider it very classic Shibata-sensei.
Now, I'm trying to remember, is that one of the shows where, like, the top two otokoyaku roles, sometimes they're switched? Like, sometimes the top star plays one role, and sometimes the top star plays the other role?
Yes. Well, actually, not the top star, but the Nibante role, sometimes the Nibante plays one of the characters, and sometimes they play the other. And in the 2007 version, Hokusho Kaede and Ranjitomu actually they did a role switch halfway through, and the roles were about equal in terms of what they had going on.
Okay, yeah, because I know in one of the other shows that I'm going to talk about in a minute, that has happened in the past where I feel like he was writing in a different era of Takarazuka where, like, nowadays you've got the star system. The top star system is so entrenched that everybody's like, there has to be this top star role and it has to have this much stage time. And then you got to have your Nibante, your second role, and it's got to have much less than the top star. But I feel like back in the 60s and 70s, it was a little bit looser.
Yeah.
And sometimes, those roles could be interchangeable.
Yeah, and actually, we were talking earlier about having good roles for Musumiyaku, and I feel like there were at least besides the top Musumiyaku, there's also pretty good roles for the next few Musumiyaku down the list. But okay, now I remember. So Valentia has the dubious honor of the only show that I ever went to see with my mom.
Oh!
I was living in Japan at the time, and my mom came to visit me, and we were doing some sightseeing, so we went to Kansai, and at the time, that was my very first trip to Takarazuka City, but so my mom went with me, and I think it's tough for a non-Japanese speaker to get much of anything out of it, but I remember she came out of it saying, well, I got that so-and-so really loved so-and-so a whole lot.
Sometimes that's all you need.
Yeah.
All right, Carly, how about your other show, your other pick?
I also really like Sorrowful Cordova, which I think is a perfect example of how somehow miraculously his restagings hold up so well, because I feel like that particular show, if like any of the new directors this year wrote the exact same story, everyone would be like, what the hell is this? But it's just so like, it's so quietly well done the way that he did it. And I saw Andromeda and Morina Miharu. Why can't I speak today? Morina Miharu's version first, and I love that version. And then it was sort of recently restaged. Chigi did it a few years ago, and I also really love that version. And it's just like, it was such a perfect role for both of them. And it was like different and similar and just somehow still perfect for both of them. And
they both have the cheekbones.
Yeah, that's true. they both have the cheekbones. And again, also a really strong top Musumiyaku role. I remember specifically when Yukigumi did it recently, Miyu was like really timid right when she first became top star, and she ended up blossoming spectacularly. But I remember thinking that that was one of the first roles that I feel like really pushed her out of her comfort zone, and she was fantastic in it, and she got noticeably better after that.
Now, that was another kind of Spanish matador kind of a show, wasn't it?
I'm a sucker for like matador aesthetic otokuyaku.
Yeah. I saw Matobuse and Sakura no Ayane and Ozora Yuhi do it, but I don't think I saw any of the earlier versions or the later ones. So yeah.
It's very good.
Yeah, there is something about matadors. Whenever they come back to them, you're like, yes, it's another show.
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like a good thing, but it's just.
But like you said, like if it's a good script,
yeah,
something about it resonates. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I guess I'll jump in with my next. My other one was, hold on a minute, because I am having a mind blank. Oh, the translation is "Love Blooms Out on the Murasaki no."
Yeah,
and it's a Japanese style nihon mono. He did actually a lot of really famous nihon mono. Like there were a bunch that I've taken a look at that he did. There were actually, I didn't realize this until a lot later. He did one that was kind of like a trilogy that like covers about 300 years of Japanese history. Yeah, based on like old emperors and empresses and, you know, all that like infighting and stuff. And this is one of them. So, Love Blooms Out on the Murasaki no is in the Asuka period in Japan. And it's one of those shows that had two kind of equally strong otokuyaku lead roles. And over the years, when it's been restaged like 8 times. Sometimes the top star will play one role and sometimes the other, because they're two brothers. And I remember when I first figured out what the story was about, I was like, what? Because it's like one brother marries one woman, the other brother marries another woman, and then the older brother falls in love with the younger brother's wife and confiscates her because he's the emperor and he can do that. And so he takes his brother's wife away. But a whole bunch of other political intrigues and stuff is going on. So it's very interesting. That and the other two plays that aren't restaged as much as this one are all kind of in that same time period of when people were killing their grandfathers and their grandsons and all this other crazy stuff was going on. But this one is so beautiful, and God, I can't remember, but I've heard a bunch of Takarazuka also mention that this is their favorite Takarazuka show. So
they do it so frequently.
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's just a really beautiful show. And it is. It's like a painful love story. And you're like, but it is. Yeah, because, all the people are like kind of torn between being in love with one person or, feeling that they're owe their allegiance to this person. And it's kind of like, it's very typical Nihon Mono kind of a deal, but I really like it, so.
There's a number that one of the characters sings to the wife of his brother about desiring her, and for some reason that sticks out of my mind.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Yep. That's probably the Emperor just before he runs off with, his brother's wife.
Yeah. And did Sena Jun play both roles in that, or did I just make that up?
I know she played the older brother. Hold on. Let me get on the Takawiki and see.
Yeah, I think not just the Nihon Mono, but most of his plays are painful love stories.
Very painful. Becca mentioned it earlier. Like, no, I think she always ended up playing. Oh, that's what it was. She always ended up playing the one brother. But sometimes she was in the lead as the lead role, and then she did it in 2002 Flower version with Haruno Sumire playing the other role. That was one of the how I said, like, sometimes the top star plays one role and sometimes they play the other. Okay. So Haruno Sumire played Nakano Oe, who is the older brother, I think, and Sena Jun played Oama, which is the younger brother. And then later, in 2006, Moon Troop did it, and she still played the younger brother, even though she was the top star.
They just reused pieces of that story in Kamatari, the Hoshigumi show.
Oh, did they really?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I feel like sometimes it's kind of like Shinsengumi, if it's a really good story, they're just going to find a bazillion ways to rewrite it. So. Yeah. Which also, he did Shinsengumi, like a version.
He did, Chushinguro was Shinsengumi, right?
No, he did Chushinguro, but he also did Hoshikage no Hito, right? Isn't it Shinsengumi?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking of. But Chushinguro is one of my favorite Nihon Mono of all time.
That's also a really good one. All right, who did we miss? Who else has? Becca, did you want to talk about another one?
So another one I will talk about is Oyama Kaden, which I really liked because it was a Nihon Mono, but it also had a bit of a fantasy element to it. So the version I saw was a restaging with Sorigumi. I think it was Ozora Yuki's Ohirome Koen, but the main character is a demon who at one point had fallen in love with a human girl but belongs to this tribe of demons. And I remember there were really gorgeous costumes and the way that the demons were made up. And once again, it was very sad, but also very beautiful. Has anyone else seen Oyama Kaden?
I have, yeah. Yeah, the costumes are very, like, kind of like classical demon type, where you see the big clothes and the big hair and the horns and stuff. It's, like, very, like, the costumes are very impressive. I remember that, too.
Yeah, and, well, that was 10 years ago. What happened? Wow.
To time?
Wow. Isn't that funny? Yeah. And I remember it was also funny because the demons were just very demonic. Aren't they always, like, hanging around, drinking, like, sake out of, like...
Yeah, well...
Big, yeah. It's, like, very, like... I want to say it's very, like a Japanese fairy tale depiction of demons. Like, the little thing that they were drinking out of was, like, bigger than them. What do you call the little cup that you drink sake out of? Or not a cup, but, like, the flat kind of bowl.
Yeah.
I can't think of the word for it, but it was, like, huge. It was, like, as big as them. And it's just like, hey, why not? They're demons. Like, I'm sure it had a reason for it.
Yeah, the whole thing had a very fairy tale feel to it. And I remember the character that Michan played. Okay, well, first of all, I remember that character survived because I was predicting that she was going to die horribly. But then I found out that the character comes from Japanese folklore or history. I don't remember, but so I'm not sure if that's actually based off of any other kind of a story. Does anyone remember, or is it an original?
I think it was based off of a comic book.
Maybe that
which is probably based off of yeah, I could see that.
And it's about can demons and humans fall in love, but it was very poignant.
Yeah. He did a lot of adaptations too, actually. Didn't he? I mean, he did the original version of Scarlet Pimpernel, not the one that Takarazuka does now, but he did a version of Scarlet Pimpernel in the 90s. He did
Romeo and Juliet.
Romeo and Juliet. He did man, what's that shoujo comic series? Angelique. He did a lot of stuff.
There was a Takarazuka adaptation of Angelique?
There were two, yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
In the 80s. Yeah. He had one, and then he had a sequel. Great. I think we managed to keep it short and concise.
Yep.
I think we did. But looking over this list, he really did contribute a lot, I think, to what we think of as Takarazuka.
Yeah,
a certain genre.
Yeah, I totally recommend check out, find a list, look at Wikipedia or look at the TakaWiki and take a look through some of the things he's done, and you'll be like, oh, he did this show and this one and this one? What? Yeah.
And I would also just go down this list in terms of Takarazuka watch recommendations. If you're new to Takarazuka, or if you've only seen more recent stuff, a lot of the classics are Shibata-sensei, and I have not seen as many of his shows as I would like, but all the ones I have seen, I can't think of one that I dislike.
And I guarantee in the next couple of years, there's going to be some restagings of his work. So
Absolutely.
Even if you don't like to watch older stuff, you want to watch stuff with actresses you're familiar with, keep an eye out.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, Shibata-sensei, thank you for everything you contributed.
Yes.
And we'll miss you.
Very much. I'm glad that the combination of his script writing and Sha-sensei's directing can live on.
Yes. Yeah, I'm excited to I haven't seen the new version of Gaisenmon, so
it's so good. I love it.
Yeah. I really like Sha-sensei's stuff, so maybe we'll do an episode about her next.
That would be
cool.
All right, thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Many thanks to Michael B. and the Arcanum String Quartet for their wonderful arrangement of Sumire no Hana Sakugoro. And thank you, listeners, for enjoying our podcast.